Hi, this is Melissa Teitelbaum. I use the pronouns she and her. I'm doing my bachelor's in social work at Ryerson University and my placement for a safer space. Today I'm going to be talking about skills that can be used to manage anger. So first of all, what is anger? So anger is a natural response to perceived threats. It causes the body to release adrenaline, muscles to tighten, and heart rate and blood pressure to increase. So typically feelings of anger might interfere with our ability to think rationally about situations. So the emotional aspect takes over and may lead us to doing things that we wouldn't have done with a clearer, more balanced mind. Anger can be caused by a lot of things, including losing patience, feeling underappreciated, perception of injustice taking place, having memories of traumatic or enraging events, worrying about personal problems, as well as unique triggers based on what you've been taught to expect from yourself, others, and your environment. It can be influenced by personal history, how you've been taught to express anger, as well as genetics, brain chemistry, and underlying medical conditions. So is anger always an issue? Is the big question. So it's not necessarily the feeling of anger that is the issue, but more so the way that it is handled. Being angry can actually be helpful in sharing concerns in a healthy way. It can be protective and it can be motivating if it's well managed. So, for example, if you find out that a friend has not been truthful with you, this may cause feelings of anger. But if managed healthily, the feelings can motivate you to confront the friend in a way that promotes conflict resolution. On the other hand, some ways of expressing anger can be harmful to your health. So, for example, always keeping anger pent up inside and never expressing it outwardly can make chronic pain worse, while general high levels of anger and hostility can be linked to heart disease, high blood pressure, peptic ulcers, and stroke. So, at what point is it time to consider learning anger management skills? Maybe time if you cannot seem to be able to control your feelings of anger, if your anger causes you to perform actions that you later regret, if your anger is causing you to do things that are hurting yourself or those around you, or if the actions correlated with your anger are having a direct impact on your personal relationships. So, a useful way to understand how anger operates is by looking at the cycle of anger. So this diagram represents how anger can be seen as a cycle growing out of our thoughts that can become difficult to break. So it starts with an event that triggers feelings of anger, for example, having a bad day at work, which then leads to negative thoughts, for example, oh, my boss is so unreasonable, which then leads to an emotional response, which could be anger directed towards your boss, then leading to physical symptoms, the body's automatic response, such as a racing heart, sweating, shaking, etc. And finally, this leads to a behavioral response. So in this example, it could be starting a fight with your boss. So the first skill that is important in anger management is catching anger quickly. So anger management teaches us to deal with anger in a healthy way. So it's not about getting rid of anger entirely, but managing it. And this begins with practicing self-awareness and noticing that the anger is present before it takes over the mind and becomes less controllable. And once you're able to notice the presence of anger in advance, techniques that allow you to control it will be all the more useful. So one way to do this is by using the anger thermometer. This is a technique to learn about anger symptoms and warning signs, the earliest symptoms of anger that often go unnoticed, and how they progress as anger escalates. So as you can see, this is a 10-point scale, 10 representing the maximum amount of anger, and 1 meaning no anger at all. So symptoms of anger, such as balled up fists, starting arguments, expressions of frustration, should be recorded on the thermometer at the point where they begin. And you can also use it to indicate triggers that lead to these symptoms. So anything that is put on the scale that falls below a 5 can be thought of as a warning sign. And these are very important as a deciding factor in the crossroads between controlling anger and letting it grow out of control. So some examples of these warning signs, though they are absolutely different for everyone, is becoming argumentative, sweating, becoming defensive, pacing, and feeling hot. So once you've filled out the thermometer, it's important to review it as much as possible in order to become more aware of warning signs for anger instead of just automatically filtering them out and having them go unnoticed. Coping strategies can then be planned in accordance with levels of anger. So, for example, deep breathing may be a good coping strategy if symptoms are at a level 3 on the scale, but walking away or calling a friend may work better if the level has escalated to, say, a 5 or an 8. Another potentially useful skill is to just take a timeout. Sounds simple, but just by walking away and taking a break from the situation, you can manage your anger very well. So some things that you can do in regards to taking timeouts, you can come up with a plan for taking your time out, especially in situations where two people are frequently getting into arguments. So you can decide ahead of time how you will call the timeout, what you'll do, and how long it may last. Another thing you can do is call the timeout early on because it will not necessarily work once the anger has escalated to too high a level. You can also practice taking timeouts, even when they're not needed in the moment, so that when they are needed, you will remember exactly what to do. If a timeout does not work the first time, you can try taking another one. There is not a set amount of time that needs to pass before you can go back into the situation, so you can take as many as you need. It's also just to note that this will not always be an appropriate coping method in every situation. For example, it might not be acceptable in a work context, so there are other skills that can be used in other contexts. So that's going to be it for today. Thank you so much for listening and hope to see you again next week. Thank you very much.